Hello and welcome to the Art of Decluttering podcast. I'm your host, Amy Revell, and I am very glad that you're with me today. I'm glad that I'm with you and that we're chatting all things decluttering and organising as we do every single week. Whether this is number 1 episode for you and you're starting here, or whether you've worked your way all the way from the beginning, welcome. I'm excited about today's episode because doing Stocktake is actually something that I weirdly love. I've not ever worked in retail, so I had to do it in a retail space, but I did own my own kids' party supply business once. So for a couple of years, quite a few years, I owned a kids' party supply business and we had a stock room at our house, and so it was all online, so I would post off orders. But can I tell you that doing a Stocktake twice a year was some of my favorite days in the business. It was a matter of going through and looking at what I had versus what I thought I had. Where were the gaps? Where was the overstock? Where were things that needed to be written off? Like, it was just so much fun. Like, I genuinely enjoyed it. And I did it all manually. It was pre being able to kind of do all that stuff on apps and whatever. And over the years since then, I have really found that doing Stocktake as part of your progression and life being lived intentionally, being decluttered and organised, a Stocktake is actually a really key component of maintaining where you are in your life and how you're living and how you're using your space and, where stuff has come, because, we talk about it every week. Your decluttering is not static. It doesn't just happen and then it's done. It's fluid. It goes, through peaks and troughs, and sometimes you have more stuff and less stuff. But I think the benefit of thinking about things in terms of a Stocktake is it really forces you to see the things that you own as inventory. And not only just inventory in terms of it takes up space and it's, you can count it and that type of thing, but it's inventory in the sense that it costs you something to acquire it. There's a cost-benefit analysis going on about whether do you keep it, do you need less, do you need more, how are you going to store it, how are you going to manage it. And when you look at your stuff through that kind of lens of inventory and Stocktake, I think it is really helpful. Now, for those of you who have been following the world of the art of decluttering and myself for, all of the 10 years that I've been doing this, many of you will have followed along in what I've called in the past, Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month. And the whole concept of Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month is doing a Stocktake in your kitchen. It's doing a Stocktake in your pantry, in your fridge, and in your freezer. And so I was like, do I do an episode just on Eat Yourself Out of House and Home? Oh, I don't know. But I actually want to go broad and talk about Stocktake, generally speaking, because some of you will then apply it to Eat Yourself Out of House and Home, and I'll explain what that looks like. But there's other ways in your home that you can apply a Stocktake philosophy so that you can, as I said, just see things in a little bit of a different way. And so what inspired me to particularly record this today, as many of you know, my dad is our chef, and so he cooks for us each night. He's amazing, and this afternoon I was picking up an amazing vegetable and tuna mornay from him, and he came out with this big basket of mismatched containers. So glass containers and lids and plastic containers and different brands and different things. And he said, I have gone through all of my storage and these don't have lids and bases and nothing matches. So can you take them all to your house, see if you've got any of the odds and ends, and let's match them, and whatever's left we're going to get rid of, right? So he had done a Stocktake, and it was purely of the things like Tupperware and storage containers that you would transport food in. So it wasn't like a really broad Stocktake right throughout the house, but it was really specific with kitchen containers. So what I have now, and I've put it on my bench because I'm going to go through and I'm actually looking forward to doing the matchy-matchies and seeing what matches and what doesn't and what's broken. But now it's my chance to go through and do a Stocktake on my end. So the Stocktake that we're doing, Dad in his home and me in my home, is just around kitchen plastics. So you can do a Stocktake quite narrowly, like kitchen plastics, or you might do a full kitchen Stocktake and actually like how many drinking glasses do we actually have? So the idea of a Stocktake is you want to know what your quantity is. If Because once you know the facts and figures, then you can make decisions about how you live in that space, if you want more, if you want less, if you want to get rid of some, if you need to acquire some. You can make all those decisions once you've actually got the true figures. And those true figures are really important because they may be different to what you thought they were. Sometimes when you're doing a stock take in a workplace, there's an extra pallet of something that you forgot you had, or you somehow missed invoicing a delivery that went out. And so what you think you have in your head is not always what is actually there in reality. So the stock take is about like, what's the truth? Where are we at? And let's make a decision from there. So I want to talk to you a bit about eat yourself out of house and home as a way of doing stock take in your fridge, freezer and pantry. Let's go to a quick break and we'll be back in just a second. All right, so we're talking about stock take. I've explained how I'm doing a kitchen plastic stock take at the moment. And one of the big stock take areas that I want to encourage you to think about is your fridge, freezer and pantry. And the reason for that is these areas have items that will expire. And also these areas are such high use that sometimes things get pushed to the back or forgotten about. And unless you actually go through and do a stock take and see what you have, you can be wasting a lot of time and money. I love that word, monergy. Oh my gosh. Anyway, time, energy, money. You can be wasting all of these things because you don't actually know what you have. So the concept behind Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month is for every June, for as far back as I can remember, the Ravel family, we would try to purchase as few groceries as possible over the course of that month. So we would be eating things that we already had. So we'd start off with really simple things. Okay, there's a pasta sauce already in the freezer. Great. And we can see there's a packet of pasta in the pantry. There's a meal for 2 nights. And then you would get down to, okay, so we've eaten out all of the pre-made meals, but now there's like a bit of chicken stock and some peas and some frozen cheese and 2 fish fillets. And you start to get creative and use up the bits and pieces that you have stored up over time. Now, the beauty of this is you get to be really creative, and I've loved it because when you've got Google, you basically just put in the different ingredients and go, find me a recipe for dinner. You could do the same in ChatGPT, you could do the same in Pinterest, where you're just like, here's the ingredients that I found. I've got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and come up with a recipe. So sometimes you will have to go and buy additional things, but the concept is as much as humanly possible, use what you already have and then just bring in the extras. I've certainly found over the years that mostly the extras that we have needed is dairy, because that just doesn't last very long, and fruit and veg. And usually actually bread, because we find that we're not a freeze your bread type family, so we're tending to go through it pretty quickly. But once you get fruit and veg and your dairy and your bread, you will be surprised how much money you will save by eating the food that you have already purchased. It may seem incidental that you've got a couple of tins of kidney beans, a couple of tins of tuna, you've got some passata, you've got some curry paste. Like all of those little things might just seem like, oh, that's fine. That's what a normal pantry has in backstock. But when you think about the money that you've spent on that, that could be a couple of $100 worth of food sitting in your pantry that if you do not eat it, you will have to throw out eventually. And so what I love about Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month is you're doing this stock take. What do I have? And how do I clear that out to make space for new stuff? Because the idea is not necessarily that you live on, only having 1 pack of crackers and only a few nuts and, like you're really trying to live on an empty pantry all the time. But it's once a year clearing out as much as you can so you can confidently know that the food that you have in your home is fresh and you're able to eat it. There's no point in, buying a big quantity, bulk amount of meat and then freezing it for 3 years and not using it. Like that savings is just going all in the rubbish bin. And so I find that fridges are really, really interesting in Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month because we have so many sauces. We being generically, the Ravels do not have a lot of sauces. We're not a very saucy type family. That sounded terrible. You know what I mean. We're not condimenty type people. We don't have like lots of different types of pickled things and different sauces for barbecues. That's just not us. But pretty much every other fridge that I have the joy of going into, and I do love doing a fridge organize and declutter, there are so many sauces. Often they are expired, but do you actually need them? Or could you plan a meal around them? So maybe what you find is you've got a whole lot of different kind of cooking sauces that you just use little bits of at a time. What if you did a slow cooker meal and were able to put some of those in and come up with a great new recipe that you'd never thought of before? So it's not just about using up like that big, the chicken breast that you froze or the soup that you froze. It's about going like, okay, there's some salsa here. What could I do with some salsa? There's some different type of fancy cheese. What could I do with that? There's herbs and spices and all these types of things that you have spent your really hard-earned money on. And you remember you earned that money by spending your hard-earned time on it. So instead of eventually throwing it out, how can you use it? How can you utilize that which you already have to make life simpler and easier? I know one of the things I really have always loved in Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month is doing a stock take around baking supplies. And one of my favorite things is we discovered, and I think I've shared this on the podcast, and I think I probably wrote about it in my book as well. We discovered this coconut lemon gluten-free slice just by ingredients that we had sitting around. And I put it into Google and it came out with this slice, and I was like, hey, I'm going to try it. I don't know what else I'm going to use this gluten-free flour for, blah, 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 blah. It was so flipping good that we have made it dozens of times since. And I love finding like these little uses for things. And so you're reducing that waste. And freezers are often where leftovers go to die, where we think, oh yeah, I definitely will use that little bit of something. And then you put it in the freezer and you never look at it again until one day the freezer breaks and you're like, oh, we really should get that all out. Or maybe it's when you're moving house. So many times when I help people move house, they're pulling stuff out of the freezer and just chucking it all in the bin because they're like, I don't know how long that's been there. It could be 1 year, it could be 7 years. But one of the beauties of doing an annual stock take is that the maximum amount of time that anything is going to sit around is 12 months. And I really love that. I love that I can be pretty confident that the tin of things, the chickpeas and the rice and everything has not been sitting there for years and years and years. The gravy powder or the chicken stock or the cocoa powder. Sometimes when you decant things into containers, which is what we do, and have them in pantry storage in Tupperware, you don't necessarily know the use by date. So things could realistically sit there for a really long time. And they may not be making me sick, but they probably wouldn't be very fresh or very nice. So this whole stock take idea is that clearing out and making way, using up money. So one of the things around saving money is 1 year I decided that I was having so much success in years gone by of doing this Eat Yourself Out of House and Home that I decided to track our finances. So we were, tracking throughout the year how much we spent on groceries every month. And then we kept a particular eye on it in June to see if there was a difference between what we spent in June and what we spent in all the 11 months prior. I was absolutely blown away. We saved $1,000 on groceries in just 4 weeks because we were eating food that we'd already purchased. We were going out for takeaway less because we're like, oh, we've got some pasta and we've got some pesto and we've got a little bit of bacon that's been frozen. Let's just make up a pasta quickly, rather than thinking, oh, I'm so tired, there's nothing to eat, blah, 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 and then you head out and get takeaway. So it saved us $1,000, and the few media agencies picked it up and there's been stories written about it, but it is really significant. And I love helping explain to people like this stock take idea. It may seem a bit strange to bring like an inventory management system of stock take into your home, but it is going to help you so much. If you've got a deep freezer, you will know that deep freezers are so hard to get to the bottom of because there's just so much stuff in there. So doing this stock take, clear out your deep freezer. See if what you can do is actually clear it out. If you've got anything left, put it in your normal freezer and maybe turn the deep freezer off for 3 months and just see how you go. It's going to save you a lot of electricity, but it might actually save you money on groceries if you're eating what you have rather than buying in bulk when you don't necessarily have a plan to use it. Now, there's heaps of different ways you can do stock take in other areas of your home. So I think for me, it's a really obvious one to do it in the kitchen, to do the Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month. So if that's you and you want to jump on board and do that, let me know how you go over the month of June. But doing it with your kitchen plastics or doing it with anything that you've got a quantity of. So you might do it with kids' clothes. I'm going to do a stock take. How many pairs of leggings does my 6-year-old actually have? How many pairs of shorts does a 4-year-old need? So when you actually gather it all together and then you categorize it and you look at what you have, you can make really good decisions and go, well, that's too much. Or you may come out and go, oh, that's not enough. I actually do need an extra of this, or I do need some more containers in the kitchen, or I actually want ones that stack and match because then it's going to use the space better. Or actually what I really want to do is clear all the junk out of the freezer and then have 10 pre-made meals ready to go that I can just heat and eat, because that will save me money over time, because I'm not then going out and getting takeaway and the cost of living is high. And so that's a strategy that I'm going to use. So the stock take is actually like this foundational movement of like, okay, I'm going to take a stock take, which means I'm going to see what I have, and then I'm going to take that information and marry it up against what I want, how I want to live, what my financial goals are, what I want to do in terms of meals and clothes and how I want my kitchen to look, and then make some decisions. Use that as the jumping off point for your decluttering and organizing, because you're working with facts. So I know you can hear it, how much I love a stock take. If you want me to come and help you do a stock take or have my team come out, just jump on my website, theartofdecluttering.com.au, and send an inquiry, because we genuinely love it and we know it will change the way that you live in your home. It will save you money. It will save you time. And if you want to jump on, I would love to hear how you go with Eat Yourself Out of House and Home Month. I am going to go sort some plastics and see what we end up with and send some back to Dad, hopefully empty, so that they can come back full to our lovely freezer, which will also be empty. And it's the circle of life. I hope that's helpful. Go do a stock take, pick how you want to do it, share how you go over on the Facebook community. And I'm going to see you next week. Until then, enjoy the freedom. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land this podcast is recorded on. I would also like to pay respect to their elders, both past and present, of the Kulin Nation, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love you to rate and review the show on your podcast app. That will help others to find the Art of Decluttering podcast as well. If you'd like any more information, you can visit theartofdecluttering.com.au, and I would love to see you in my Facebook group. Just search the Art of Decluttering community on Facebook and join today. I hope that you have an incredible rest of your day and enjoy the freedom.